Welcome to a deep dive into Chinese religion. We're going to be exploring how the lines between divine and demonic can get kind of blurry using the Sinister Way, the divine and demonic in Chinese religion, to guide us. Think gods who can grant you wealth, but also maybe steal your wife.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical good versus evil situation. It's more like a vibrant tapestry where contradictions and paradoxes are just woven right into the divine.
So let's go back, way back to ancient China. Ancestor worship, right? Big deal there.
Absolutely fundamental. To them, ancestors weren't just gone. They were powerful spirits, still influencing the world. Like during the Shang dynasty, kings would actually consult their deified ancestors for guidance.
Wow, so like a divine board of directors.
Pretty much.
But then things shift with the Zhou dynasty. We get Tian heaven.
Right. Now it's the mandate of heaven, not just about keeping your ancestors happy, but ruling virtuously,
Right.
maintaining that cosmic harmony. A king screws up, he loses the mandate, maybe a rebellion, new dynasty, the whole deal.
So now the king's not just answerable to his ancestors, but to this whole cosmic order. Big change.
Huge. And this balance, this order, becomes even more important during the Han Dynasty. They
Yep.
come up with this whole underworld bureaucracy, mirrors the earthly one, gods with specific jobs like departments in a government, keeping the cosmos running smoothly.
Bureaucracy, even in the afterlife. Okay, starting to see how those lines blur. Powerful gods, but they've got rules, responsibilities. But what about everyday folks back then? What were they worried about? How did they fit into all this?
Well, life was tough, right? Lots of threats, especially illness. And for them, illness wasn't just bad luck. It was often blamed on demonic forces.
Okay, spooky music time. We're talking demons, black magic, right? You mentioned Go and Huo.
Yeah, Go was like using bad magic to hurt someone, curses, poisons. Hu, that was demonic possession, a spirit taking over your body and mind. And this wasn't just folklore, it was in medical texts too. Spells and exorcisms right there with herbal remedies.
So like a spiritual A&D, a physical approach to healing, fighting on multiple fronts. But did they all believe in these purely demonic explanations? They were pretty advanced, understood the body.
Over time, things got more nuanced. They developed this idea of qi, vital energy flowing through everything. Imbalances in qi, that's what caused a lot of illness.
Like acupuncture, tai chi, right,
Right.
restoring that energy flow. I wonder if their whole view of the body was different from, say, Western medicine.
That's interesting. Western medicine, it tends to focus on specific diseases, isolate and treat. The Chinese approach was much more holistic, everything connected. Body, mind, cosmos, the whole shebang.
It's amazing how different ways of thinking shape how we see health and well-being. But let's get back to those demons. Or maybe more accurately, a goddess who walks that demon-divine line. The Queen Mother of the West.
Ah, Shiwangu, a total powerhouse in Han mythology. Early on, she's depicted as monstrous, connected to shamanism and these fearsome mountain spirits, wild landscapes, raw power, even death, all associated with her.
Not exactly the sweet grandma type. So how does she go from mountain spirit to the goddess of immortality?
That's where it gets really cool. As her cult grew, her image softened. Han Dynasty emperors, they were obsessed with immortality, and she became the keeper of that elixir, that eternal life potion. So she shifts into this symbol of longevity, power, divine grace, the whole package. But she doesn't totally lose that wild edge. Still connected to nature's primal forces. Nurturing A&D, dangerous, feminine power in all its complexity.
That's quite the career change. Makes you wonder what cultural forces were at play there. Was it all the emperor's doing or something more?
Probably a mix, right? Emperor's influence for sure, but broader shifts too. Han Dynasty, lots of expansion, cultural exchange happening. She might have absorbed influences from other beliefs, ones with female deities, Plus, remember, the Chinese worldview loves a good contradiction. Benevolent AD fearsome, creation AD destruction, all rolled into one.
So it wasn't a total makeover, more like a rebranding, highlighting different sides of her already complex nature. Makes you think about how we interpret these divine figures, how that changes over time. But for now, let's move from these cosmic big shots to something a little more down to earth. Those local gods, the tutelary spirits, watching over specific places, communities.
This is where Chinese religion gets really granular. Place and community, super important. These guys often emerge from, historical figures who died tragically, violently. They become part of the land itself. Take the Tudi, the local earth gods. Every village, every home had a Tudi shrine. Deep respect for the spirits of place.
Honoring your home turf, right? Any good examples of these local gods? How does a regular person become a deity?
There's Sire Lai, died suddenly, becomes this powerful local god, protects communities, even influences the emperor, shows how even ordinary people could become divine, especially if their death was seen as unjust or if they were super virtuous in life.
Kind of empowering. It's not just distant gods. You could have a personal connection with one, a god who gets your local struggles. Speaking of local spirits with the dark side, what about Wutong? Starts as this creepy, one-legged mountain goblin, total nightmare fuel.
Ah, Wu Tong. Even his early form, the Shangxiao, they were linked to plagues, mischief, tricksters lurking in the shadows. Scary and intriguing all at once.
But then he levels up, becomes a god of wealth, but there's a catch.
It's not just prosperity, it's the potential for wealth to corrupt, to lead to downfall. Imagine a deal with the devil, riches, but at a terrible cost. That's Wu Tong.
High risk, high reward situation. What was the cultural context for this? Just scaring people into being good?
It's deeper than that. This is the Ming Qing dynasty's booming economy, but huge inequality. He embodies that anxiety. Society grappling with new wealth and all the ways it could go wrong. His popularity then really tells us something.
So like, hey, I can make you rich, B-U-T. I bet the authorities weren't fans.
Oh yeah, they thought his cult was dangerous, subversive, tried to ban his images, destroy his shrines, even punish his followers. But,
Didn't quite work.
exactly. The harder they pushed, the more it spread. Like a wildfire. It pops up somewhere else.
Makes you wonder why he resonated so strongly. What was it about him?
I think he got those anxieties, those aspirations of a society changing fast. He was both the desire for wealth and the fear of it, a figure who understood ambition.
It's a reminder that religion isn't always about comfort, certainty. Sometimes it's about facing the messy realities of life and making sense of them.
Absolutely. And Wu Tong, with all his contradictions, helped people do just that. The ambiguity of wealth, the challenges of a changing world.
Okay, we focused a lot on Wutong, but he's just one piece of the puzzle. Chinese religion was adapting all over the place. What else was going on?
Well, alongside these figures, we still see those local gods, especially the Tudi, those earth deities. Every village, every home had a Tudi shrine.
Right, honoring those spirits of place, the guardians of your community.
And in the Ming Dynasty, this local focus, it gets a boost from the state itself. Officials are actually tasked with promoting these local gods. It strengthens social bonds, makes their own authority stronger.
So spiritual and political power. Local gods, the bridge between the people and the state.
Exactly. And this is all amplified by printing technology. We talked about how it spread religious ideas.
Mass production of images, texts, ritual manuals.
Exactly. It created a shared religious identity. It's like a divine franchise. Local god, their own story, their own powers, but their image, the rituals, you recognize them anywhere.
It's incredible how the local and national mix speaks to how dynamic, how adaptable Chinese religion is.
And that adaptability, that's why it's so powerful, why it lasts. Not some rigid, unchanging system. It's a whole tapestry of beliefs, practices, evolving over centuries, responding to what people need, what they fear.
So what's the key takeaway for our listeners? What should they remember about navigating this world of Chinese gods and demons?
Embrace the nuance. Don't get caught up in good versus evil, divine versus demonic. Those lines blur, they shift. It's all being renegotiated.
Reminds us the world, spiritual and earthly, is full of contradictions, and maybe that's okay.
Exactly. Embrace the mess. Question your assumptions, and keep asking questions. The deeper you dive, the more fascinating it gets.
Couldn't agree more. And with that, we'll wrap up this part of our dive into Chinese religion. But before we go, a final thought. Imagine you could chat with one of these deities, anyone we've talked about. Who would it be? What would you ask? Think about it. Maybe share your thoughts with us on social media. Thanks for coming along on this journey.
It really is amazing how these beliefs, evolve, change over time. Not just individual figures, but like the whole way people see the world around them.
Totally. And speaking of adapting, I'm curious how they dealt with those times when things went really wrong, like a plague hits. We talked about the demonic forces thing.
Right, right. Even with all the more sophisticated medical theories that and all that, they never really dropped the idea that illness, it could have a supernatural origin.
Yeah.
And with plagues, those fears, they went through the roof.
Yeah, I can see that. A plague ripping through your community. Got to feel like some kind of divine punishment.
Yeah, in a way, it was seen that way sometimes. Remember the mandate of heaven? Rulers unjust, harmonies disrupted. Bam! Heaven sends disasters, plagues included. A sign,
Oh, not just individual demons causing a ruckus. It's like the whole cosmic order is out of whack.
Mm.
Which brings up a kind of freaky question. If plagues can be a sign of Heavy's anger, could the gods themselves be the source?
Whoa, you're hitting on something deep there.
Yeah.
That's the core of how they saw the divine. It wasn't always benevolent gods looking out for us. They could be unpredictable, even wrathful, just like life itself, right?
So you're praying to these beings for protection, but they might be the ones causing the problem. That's a bit of a head scratcher.
It is a paradox.
Yeah.
But it shows how much power they believed these deities had, for good or bad, like the 5 demon masters. Originally, totally fearsome, pestilence, calamity, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Personified forces of nature, unleashing chaos.
Yeah, not who you want showing up at your door, but you said they get a promotion later on. How's that work?
So in Taoist lore, they're eventually brought under control, become celestial soldiers fighting for good, like they got recruited to the cosmic police,
Yeah.
using their powers to battle evil, restore balance.
Classic redemption arc. From plague bringers to plague busters, shows how fluid those categories were. What starts as a demon, bam, protective god, depends who's telling the story.
You got it. And this fluidity, it's not just for the cosmic big shots, happens on a local level too. Remember Sire Lai, the guy who became a god? Some stories say he was a troublemaker first, caused illness, mischief before he calmed down, turned into a protector.
Even in death, there's room for growth, a career change. I wonder how people understood these transformations. Was it just about keeping the spirits happy, or did they really believe they could change?
Probably both, right? Appease those deities, turn their anger into favor, but also this belief that even the scariest spirits, they could be transformed. Ritual, devotion, right actions, all played a part.
So it's not just about praying to the right god, it's about being part of that change, personal A&D cosmic level. But let's get practical here. If they were so scared of plague deities, they must have had ways to protect themselves. Was it all big exorcisms, crazy rituals?
Those were important, especially for the state, yeah. But there were more personal ways too. Amulets, talismans, certain colors, symbols, they all warded off evil.
Like a lucky charm or the saint medals, right. I'm picturing fancy carvings, scrolls with spells and stuff.
Those existed, but some were surprisingly simple. Remember the 5 demon masters. To protect against them, people would wear 5-colored silk streamers. Each one represented a different element.
So fashion meets spiritual warfare. I love that. Practical and symbolic, like those red string bracelets supposed to ward off the evil eye. Did these amulets, the talismans, did they work? Did people actually feel protected?
Hard to say for sure, but they acted like a psychological shield,
Yeah.
Connected you to the divine power, gave you a sense of control in a world that felt chaotic.
That sense of connection, not being alone against the unknown, that's powerful stuff. Speaking of powerful protectors, gotta ask about Zhang, the demon queller. I've seen images, but never really knew his deal.
Oh, Zhang, he's a fascinating one. He starts as this scholar, suffers a huge injustice, gets cheated out of his position, so much despair that he takes his own life. But his spirit, it can't rest.
Another victim of the system.
Yep.
So how does he go from wrong scholar to demon slayer?
Legend says he shows up in the emperor's dream, vows to get rid of all the demons, and from then on, he's this iconic figure, fierce warrior, wild beard, crazy eyes, sword in hand, capturing demons in a sack.
Yeah, pretty intense imagery. People actually worshipped him as a god.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
His image was everywhere, especially during New Year's. Hang his portrait on your door, keep those evil spirits out, like a divine bouncer,
Yeah. Love that analogy. Shows how these beliefs weren't just abstract, cosmic stuff. It was about protecting your home, your family. But his story also shows that even regular humans can become these powerful symbols, protectors, spiritual authorities.
And it's those human experiences, the injustice, the suffering, that fuels their power, gives them that street cred in the fight against evil. It's a common theme, this idea that overcoming hardship can make you strong, even divine.
We can all relate to that, right? Even when things are tough, there's potential for change, for power. But let's shift gears, move to a period of huge change in Chinese history, the Song Dynasty. What happened to those religious beliefs then?
The Song Dynasty, man, that was a whirlwind. Economy booming, cities exploding, trade everywhere, printing, changing how knowledge spreads. The whole religious landscape was reshaped.
So we're moving from emperors and grand rituals to something more urban, more dynamic. What happens to those gods or those demons? Do they get a makeover?
In a way, yeah. Old beliefs stick around, but they adapt. One big thing is the rise of those local gods, the tutelary spirits we talked about. Sire Lai, he gets even more popular. It reflects this growing local identity, this need for protection that's more immediate, more accessible.
It's not just the emperor's ancestors or those cosmic deities anymore. It's about connecting with the spiritual forces right there in your daily life, your community.
Exactly. And these local gods, they become superstars. People feel like they can relate to them, that they actually respond to their needs, like having a divine neighbor you can ask for help. And this shift, it's fueled by printing technology.
Ah, right. Printing changed everything.
Yeah.
How did that play out with these local gods?
It meant mass production of texts, images, anything related to those deities, more accessible for everyone, and it helped standardize their worship, like creating a divine franchise. You got your local god, their own story, but the image, the rituals, everyone knows them.
Local and national, personal and institutional, all blended together. That complexity is what makes Chinese religion so fascinating. And it seems like this trend, personalized religion, local gods, individual practice, it keeps going into the Ming and Qing dynasties, right?
You nailed it.
Yeah.
And as we get into those later dynasties, next time we dive in, we'll see how change, adaptation, those blurred lines between divine and demonic, they just keep shaping the landscape. It's wild, right? How these beliefs evolve.
Totally. Last time we were talking about the Song dynasty, all those changes, cities booming, trade, printing. What happened to religion as we move into the Ming and Qing dynasty?
So picture this, society's transforming, right? You've
Yeah.
got merchants on the rise, people moving up in the world, but also new worries, wealth, status, morality, all that. And certain deities, they get super popular because they reflect what people want, what they're afraid of.
I bet Wu-Tong fits right in, our one-legged goblin turned wealth god.
Oh, absolutely. He becomes the symbol of how tricky wealth can be. Bestow riches, bring ruin, the whole package. He's like a warning, you know. Fortune's fickle, chasing wealth can be dangerous.
I can give you what you want, but kind of vibe. What were the stories about him like back then?
Full of drama, let me tell you. Seducing women for riches, driving people mad with greed, families falling apart because of sudden wealth, like a supernatural soap opera.
I bet the authorities were not pleased. Didn't they try to, get rid of his cult?
Big time. They saw it as a threat, bad for society, bad morals, the whole deal. Banned his images, wrecked his shrines, even punished his followers. But
Didn't really work, did it?
no. The more they tried to shut it down, the more it spread. Like a wildfire. You put it out in one spot, it pops up somewhere else.
Why was he so popular then? Even with the government against him?
He embodied that whole struggle, I think. The desire for wealth, the fear of it. Society was changing so fast, and he got it.
It's interesting how religion isn't always about feeling good, being certain. Sometimes it's about facing the tough stuff, figuring it out.
Totally. And Wu-Tang, with all his contradictions, he gave people a way to do that, to understand wealth, the ups and downs, the challenges of a world in flux.
So Wu-Tang's one example, but what other changes were happening?
Local gods, they were still huge, especially the Tudi, those earth deities. Remember, every village, every home had a Tudi shrine.
Honoring those spirits of place, those protectors.
And in the Ming Dynasty, this local focus got even stronger, thanks to the government. They actually had officials promote these local gods, strengthen communities, made their own power more legit.
So smart, right? Spiritual and political power all rolled into one. Those local gods, they're the bridge between the people and the state.
Exactly. And then you've got printing technology spreading those ideas even further.
Mass production of everything. Images, texts, how to do the rituals, all of it.
Right. So now you've got this shared religious identity. Like I said, a divine franchise. Your local god, unique story, sure, but the image, the rituals, you know them anywhere.
It's amazing the local and the national blending like that shows you how alive Chinese religion is, how it can change with the times.
And that's the key. That's why it's lasted so long.
Yeah.
Not some fixed set of rules. It's this living, breathing thing, evolving, responding to what people need.
So after all this, what's the big takeaway for our listeners? How should they think about all these Chinese gods and demons?
Don't oversimplify. It's not just good versus evil, divine versus demonic. In Chinese religion, those lines, they're blurry, they're always moving. It's all about nuance.
Reminds us that the world, whether it's spiritual or the world outside, it's full of contradictions, and that's not a bad thing.
Exactly. Lean into the messiness, don't take things at face value, and keep asking questions. That's how you discover the really cool stuff.
Couldn't put it better myself. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Chinese religion, but I want to leave you with one last thought. Imagine you could talk to one of these deities, anyone we discussed. Who would it be? What would you ask? Think about it, share your thoughts with us online. Thanks for joining us on this journey.